California High-Speed Rail is a rail megaproject in the works since the 2000s. It is set to link San Francisco and Los Angeles via the Central Valley cities and provide a fast 2.5-hour link between the two cities with a top speed of 220 miles an hour. This cuts travel time down from 5.5 hours via car without traffic, or 3.5 hours by plane if including check-in, security, baggage collection, and commuting. California High-Speed Rail is America's first true high-speed rail line, and there are many fun aspects to look at. California High-Speed Rail's Phase 1 route from San Francisco to Los Angeles is 494 miles long. The route starts off by using the electrified Caltrain route from San Francisco to San Jose. California High-Speed Rail partially funded the Caltrain electrification in exchange for the trackage rights on the Caltrain line. South of San Jose, it uses the tracks to Gilroy. However, the situation for those is less clear than the San Jose-San Francisco line because they're owned by Union Pacific, which is a freight railroad, who would likely not electrify the tracks. Then, the train switches onto the high-speed tracks going east into the Pacheco Pass using various tunnels, including what will be the longest tunnel in the US to get through the Diablo Range. This section is also where the train can first hit the 200-mile-per-hour mark with dedicated straight trackage for the high-speed trains. After exiting the mountains, California High-Speed Rail parallels California 152 crossing the Central Valley to California 99. This is where there is a fork to go up north to Sacramento via Phase 2. The Phase 1 route then parallels California 99 going south, passing by cities like Fresno, Visalia, and Bakersfield, along with smaller cities along California 99. The California 99 section is also going to be the first to open to passengers. Going south of Bakersfield, instead of following I-5, the route makes a severe detour east to follow California 58 and California 14 towards Lancaster-Palmdale. This is likely because this route has a much more gentle gradient and can serve an additional metro area. Finally, the route follows the southern stretch of California 14 and I-5 into Los Angeles, ending the Phase 1 line. To achieve a high speed of 220 miles per hour, California High-Speed Rail features a design that is extremely different to any rail project in the US previously. First of all, much of the line is going to be elevated on large concrete viaducts and guideways. Drive through the Central Valley, especially near Fresno, and someone can expect to see these extremely large guideways spanning across the landscape. The line is also fully double-tracked and electrified because that is recommended for a high-capacity, high-speed rail line. Furthermore, the line is extremely straight. In most places, including current California rail lines, the tracks tend to follow terrain to stay level. However, just like the Japanese Shinkansen, California High-Speed Rail will use bridges and tunneling as mentioned previously to attain an extremely straight route capable of continuously staying at the operational speed of 220 miles per hour. As of 2025, only about 70 miles of guideway have actually been laid out, and no high-speed tracks have been properly laid yet. For context, the proposition approving funding for the project was approved all the way back in 2008, and construction began in 2015. Within over 10 years, the project is still not even close to operating. Furthermore, the project is now estimated to cost around $128 billion. However, there is a reason for that. The US simply hasn't tried building a revolutionary fast train with a new track since the 2000s. With how much times change, the practices of the previous projects are either forgotten or cannot apply to modern engineering standards and speeds. The Acela high-speed rail was built on very different factors. The line was the Northeast Corridor instead of a completely new line. It was the 2000s, which meant vastly different standards, and the speed reached was only 150 miles per hour for a short stretch instead of 220 miles per hour for an extremely long stretch. The new concrete guideways and high-standard track and signaling for California High-Speed Rail are vastly more expensive than the comparatively minor upgrades to the NEC to allow for Acela service. Also, those comparatively minor upgrades still end up costing billions. There is another transportation project which is moving slower and has more issues than California High-Speed Rail, but is never talked about. I-69 is a new interstate route set to link Texas to Canada. However, it is completed to an even smaller extent than California High-Speed Rail, despite being a highway which has been built many times in the recent decades and is mostly flat with no viaducts and few large bridges. Despite this, California High-Speed Rail receives a lot more hate due to the fact that California High-Speed Rail hasn't gotten an opportunity to prove itself, and I-69 is part of the proven interstate system. If California High-Speed Rail can prove the worth of high-speed rail with accelerated construction, public sentiment would change. This may sound counterintuitive to some individuals, but the project should be more strongly subsidized in order to get best results. The interstate system and Shinkansen all had extreme cost overruns of double or even triple the initial cost. Even then, we do not remember these projects for being a financial burden on the government. We remember those projects for the excellent benefits that they bring, and they have paid for themselves in a couple decades. There is no evidence that the trend will turn out any different for California high-speed rail because the theoretical demand is remarkably high. The Bay Area has nearly 8 million people, while the Los Angeles-San Bernardino combined megaregion has over 18 million, with the Los Angeles area alone having over 10 million. When factoring in the small areas within the Central Valley, California high-speed rail will likely have a high ridership number. Estimates place the ridership within the smaller Central Valley cities alone to just 2 million annually. However, the Bay Area to Central Valley link is projected to reach over 12 million annually, and the full Phase 1 to reach over 28 million annually. Assuming ticket prices of $120, that is over $3.3 billion in revenue yearly just from ticket sales, without factoring in the additions to the job market and the economic benefit of facilitating rapid connection throughout California. The point being made is that California high-speed rail is a huge project. Managing a project this large and novel in a place like the US is extremely challenging, especially with the unfavorable conditions for any ambitious rail projects into the billions of dollars. It is still amazing though that the agency has persisted, albeit at a slower pace than what would be appreciated, with such unfavorable conditions and limited funds. Still, there are some decisions that feel kind of detrimental to success. For example, starting with Merced Bakersfield instead of San Jose Fresno or Lancaster Los Angeles feels like a poor choice because San Jose Fresno or Los Angeles Lancaster would have given a larger initial ridership due to the one major area being connected, giving a boost in funds to the project while being shorter in length. However, those sections did have a longer environmental review which prevented them from being built first and may cost more for the agency due to rough terrain and unfavorable soil. On top of California high-speed rail, there's another large high-speed rail project within the state of California. Brightline West is a high-speed rail project started by the Florida private rail company Brightline. It is aimed to also start from the Los Angeles area, except from the Inland Empire's Rancho Cucamonga station instead of Los Angeles, and connect to Las Vegas. It has a similar goal to California high-speed rail, quick movement between major urban areas, beating the plane and car in terms of medium duration journey times. However, Brightline West is extremely different from California high-speed rail in many other ways, which likely contribute to its much shorter estimated construction time of 6 or 7 years, not intentional, compared to California high-speed rail's over 2 decades. First of all, Brightline West is nearly 200 miles shorter than the Phase 1 of California high-speed rail, and it is also being built within the I-15 median, which is existing infrastructure. Furthermore, California high-speed rail is fully double-tracked and much of it is built on tall viaducts, but Brightline West is almost completely built at ground level and most of it is single-tracked. This is not to mention, Brightline already has constant revenue, while California high-speed rail has to continually ask for grants. Even with constant revenue, Brightline West still has to ask for grants because the lines are initially extremely pricey. Despite California high-speed rail being more expensive at $128 billion with extreme viaducts, Brightline West is still $21.5 billion on completely flat land and being built within existing infrastructure, showing that high-speed rail is high cost, high reward. Despite being separate projects, California high-speed rail can connect to Brightline West to form a large network of high-speed rail. This is possible with the High Desert Corridor project planned to link Lancaster and Victorville, California via high-speed rail. Surprisingly, it is funded by Metrolink, not any of the two agencies. The corridor will allow for direct high-speed rail connection from San Francisco all the way to Las Vegas, and vice versa, further interconnecting the state and boosting ridership. Beyond California, there are many other places where high-speed rail is either a good idea or is currently being constructed. This includes Texas, Florida, the Midwest states, and the Southeast states. Texas has started the Texas Central project between Dallas and Houston. Florida has Brightline from Orlando to Miami. Brightline is also responsible for Brightline West. The Midwest can connect St. Louis, Detroit, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and Indianapolis to Chicago with high-speed rail, forming a large network. And the Southeast can have lines going to Jackson via Birmingham and Raleigh via Charlotte and Columbia from Atlanta. Pictured here is a theoretical high-speed rail map which would bring the US into a highly competitive position for high-speed rail and would allow for rapid travel from city to neighboring cities. Hopefully, other densely populated states will also try high-speed rail between their two largest metro areas and see the results of that. If anyone wants a rundown on the routes and how feasible they would be, let me know. While it is true that California high-speed rail is a slow-moving project with many hurdles, nothing like it has been tried for decades, and the main problem is that it requires an extreme amount of money. However, infrastructure projects like these are high risk and high reward. The upfront cost is extreme, but the returns are also extreme. The Shinkansen and interstate system also experience this, but they're mostly remembered for their connectivity, not their extreme initial cost. Thanks for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, hit like. Also, subscribe to see more content about civil engineering. I'll see you in the next video.